A little more than 15 years ago, or rather in August 2008, the Russian military space, then still the Air Force, first used a new aircraft, which was destined to open a new page in the history of domestic strike aviation. The airborne reconnaissance helicopters Mi-8 SMV, PG and Mi-8 PPA then identified the location of two AKM-OCA complexes and a Buk-1M launcher and guided our frontline bombers to it. For some time, the command of the Russian Air Force hesitated, but then decided to assign this responsible task, and the air defense in the 8th of August 08 especially the first time inflicted quite serious damage to the Russian aviation on the two newest at that time frontline bombers, whose tests were held in the training center in Lipetsk. Of course, for such an airplane debut, as they say, you can't think of anything better. But there was a nuance to all of this. The Su-34 in those years did not have the reputation of an airplane so promising and necessary for the domestic combat aviation. At the time, he was only taking tests that raised even more questions for the military. And although the developers claimed that the flight chiefs did not quite realize what a unique tool they would have in their hands, there were serious doubts that these machines would go into large production. In the mid-noughties, the concept of multi-role aircraft, actually based on former fighter jets, prevailed. And although the Su-34 was quite suitable for the role of a fighter bomber and was even listed as a heavy strike fighter in the NATO codification, many of its capabilities seemed excessive and unnecessary against the background of its rather impressive cost. A blunder in such a crucial matter could put a fat cross on the airplane's career even before its official start. Fortunately, the Su-34 performed to perfection. With the help of their onboard Rep-Kibani complex, the radar stations of anti-aircraft missile launchers were suppressed, and then the new Sukhoi supported their Su-24M predecessors, which struck a devastating blow with Kh-58U anti-radar missiles. From that moment on, our airplanes were no longer shot down in Transcaucasia and the skies were completely open for combat aviation operations. The real duckling was in Syria. 7 of our fighter bombers held in fear the leaders of armed groups, not once and not twice destroyed their meetings and hiding places with corrective bombs. Because of the ducklings' decisive actions, which desperately harassed important communications of the gangs, they lost the mobility and speed that brought them success in the early stages of the Syrian civil war. There, the duckling pumped up its combat skills and reacquired new weapons, such as the X-59 Ovid medium-range precision missiles. In terms of capabilities, they are not inferior to NATO missiles such as AGM-158, Jason, Storm Shadow, KPD-150-350, Taurus, Scalp IJI, and are capable of destroying a headquarters, warehouse, a small parking lot of equipment or a well-fortified command post of the enemy. It also turned out that thanks to a sensitive radar and advanced optoelectric complex, easily taken the sight of moving small-sized targets and good protection of the cockpit and the most important components and units, our strike bitch can very well act as an attack aircraft. Of course, this is not from a good life, but once again emphasizes how successful and versatile its design turned out to be. In May 2017, in the Syrian-Iraqi region, Army aviation supported by ducklings massing FABs from low altitudes directly at a bandit motorcade of pickup trucks with machine guns, nearly wiped out a large group of the outlawed al-Nusra. Then the duckling acquired a naval modification, and with it an anti-ship missile and the ability to destroy warships like the corvette, a small frigate and a destroyer of 5,000 tons displacement. But perhaps the most significant event in his career occurred in December 2022, when a conventional 500M62 FAB equipped with the planning and correction modules of the OMPC saw the light of day for the first time. These bombs came in handy very soon and are now noted by experts as one of the most important elements of the firing contour of modern Russian armed forces. At the end of August this year, TASS reported the interesting news that the duckling had struck a miniaturized version of the Dagger hypersonic aeroballistic system. And although there were massive denials on this subject afterwards, saying that reporters had confused the Dagger with the FAB 1500 with the WMDK, but Western experts, for example, have no consensus on this. There are only a few ultra-long-range strikes that NATO electronic intelligence cannot explain, for when they were carried out, there were no MiG-31Ks in the sky, only ducks. And now there is new news that the ducks are already in full swing using the long-range cruise missiles KRBD, which, according to an unnamed source of the Russian news agency RIA, were previously used only on strategic bombers. We could be talking about the Kh-101 missile or its miniaturized version, more suited to the Su-34 than the same Dagger. And that's not good news for our potential adversary. Unlike the big strategists, new batches of ducklings arrive to the troops actually monthly. Their production is well established, and now instead of several dozens of huge and insanely expensive and valuable long-range aviation vehicles, these weapons will be able to lift hundreds of such versatile landers. I am sure that this is not the last new mission of the Su-34, and it will probably eclipse even such a great aircraft as the MiG-31 as an indispensable all-rounder, which has never performed any functions during its career. But now it's about where the White Swans have disappeared to. And many people ask, where have the White Swans gone? Why aren't our best missile carriers flying, and what about the PAK-DA program that is supposed to replace them? It's no secret that strategic bombers are one of the most conservative branches of aviation. Cars designed in the 50s of the last century are still relevant there, and each new developed model, which eventually went into production, becomes not even an event of the year, but rather of the whole decade. And the further away from the time of the emergence of this type of aircraft, the more difficult the path to a series of such developments becomes. The newest American bomber, the P-21 Raider, has obvious problems. It has already been presented as an airplane of the future, but so far it is being rolled from the hangar to the shop under the spotlight, without even approximately announcing when the first flight will take place. Russia's newest development under the PAK-DA program is also clearly delayed. In 2020, without much pomp, they began assembling the first flight model, codenamed Envoy, and it was to make its maiden flight in 2023. But then there was an information vacuum around the airplane. And only this July, it became known that by the end of this year, the domestic complex of long-range aviation of the fifth generation should go to static tests, and its flight will take place no later than 2005. Let's hope our news services are putting more fog on the war here, because British sources claim that the Envoy is in a very decent stage of readiness. Here is one of the instances of PAK-DA's future projects, the Advanced Long-Range Aviation Complex, Messenger. It is known that this year successfully tested the crew rescue system, for him and completely decorated the external appearance of the aircraft. Be that as it may, there have been no new production models in this field since the premiere of the insanely expensive and low-flying B-2 Spirit, made in 21 examples, -3 to date. And the main reason is that even the old machines quite well covered the need for strategic aviation. The early Cold War Bears and Stratofortresses and later B-1Bs and Tu-160s had enough structural reserve to become acceptable platforms for any advanced weapons, including hypersonic weapons. And just subscribers began to ask why our best strategic missile carriers Tu-160 White Swan, virtually unmentioned in the latest military reports, have been flying so little lately. Western sources have also noticed this, and naturally did not miss an opportunity to speculate on this topic. Perhaps some of them may have been lost in drone strikes on home airbases. About the loss, this is obvious nonsense, since it is physically impossible to hide such a thing with current electronic intelligence capabilities. And this fat-fried information would instantly go viral, accompanied by thousands of high-resolution satellite images. And in general, the answer here is quite simple. By the way, this is how the difference between the Tu-160 and PAK-DA is seen by journalists of the American edition of Pop Mechanics. But back to the White Swans. Now all 18 operating machines of this class are undergoing complete modernization under the MM1M2 program, and another 10 White Swans will be produced from scratch under the M2 program, which is said to be a new aircraft in an old, well-proven airframe. The first of this dozen has already begun government testing starting in January 2022 and will enter service next year. The second M2 modification based on the White Swan is also undergoing tests in Zhukovsky. The update of these machines reaches 80%, including the famous NK-32-2 series engines. The modernization of our best strategist is scheduled to be completed in 2026. At the same time, when according to optimistic calculations we can expect the first serial copies to appear under the PAK-DA program. And the second reason is, of course, the desire to save a valuable strategic resource in case of a more serious threat to our sovereignty. The main innovation of the White Swans is a rather dramatic change in the main caliber strategic cruise missiles. The upgraded Tu-160M has already received the latest KHBD missile. Due to its increased range and ability to lay down clever maneuvers, It is capable of bypassing all current and future missile defense systems like the American NORAD and European ESA. But the main intrigue is, of course, the question of whether to wait for the rearmament of the Tu-160 on hypersonic missiles. As several versions in Western sources appear either an airborne modification of the Sircon missile, or an advanced version of the joint Russian-Indian missile BrahMos 3 series, which soon promises to learn to fly at a speed of Mach 9, or a promising airborne system KH-95. News of this development was first reported in August 2021 and since then has only appeared in foreign publications, most often in the form of rumors and speculation. So the choice here is kind of there, although it's not obvious. Now unnamed DB is a good enough project for the White Swans, giving our best rocket man an even longer arm. The missile is capable of carrying both a conventional warhead and a special warhead of up to 1 megaton at a range of up to 8,000 kilometers and to deliver high-point strikes from areas unprotected by missile defenses. This is what is here and now. Hypersonic missiles will certainly appear, and soon enough. And let it be another nice surprise to our various detractors.